All my wise from the DKNY. Miami, DC, prefer Versace. All Philly hoes who wear Moschino. Every cutie with a booty, with a coochie. What's your favorite Biggie record, Luigi?
That's a good question. I have a lot. I like Give Me the Loot.
Give me the loot. Give me the loot.
That's
I'm a bad
cool
boy.
one.
Give me the loot. All right, well, Luigi, let's start the show. It is true number 4080. Let's go.
Industry rule number 4080. Industry rule number 4080. Record company people are shady. Industry rule number 4080. Record company people are shady.
Oh boy, so this one here, this show right here, it's giving success vibes. Success vibes. Here we go, Goju Nation. Industry rule number 4080, season 3, episode 12. Welcome back to the podcast that decodes industry, culture, lifestyle, relationships with that Goju edge, that GothamJungle edge. You're in the right place to get the certified. Nope. You're in the right place to get the qualified, verified, and certified. Gotta do it in the right order. Don't forget to tap in, Goju Nation. Facebook, Gram, X, Threads, YouTube, at GothamJungle. One word, at GothamJungle. Like, follow, share, comment, subscribe, and become an official part of Goju Nation. And you know what I need you guys to do? This is becoming more important. There's a newsletter coming out. So when you tap in and you hang out with us and follow and share and subscribe, in the comments, give us your email address so I can add you to the mailing list for this newsletter that's coming out shortly. Goju Nation, there will be a newsletter coming out shortly. I need your information so I can keep you tapped in with all things GothamJungle. All right? Thank you, and thank you for that. All right, Goju Nation, so here we go. This looks like this might be the beginning of a series, but we'll see where this takes us. I'm bringing in someone who I've worked with in the past. There's this phrase that they used to say, or they still say, is that we actually gave this person checks. So that wasn't just conversation. Okay, this person got paid for this work, and we developed a professional relationship. I think that's safe to say that we've developed a professional relationship. For all the quote 90s babies, this is one of the architects and one of the main reasons you are a 90s baby, because of what this person's work has been. And I like to ask this question of the culture to kind of speak to its validity of being in the culture. Would the music landscape be different if this person wasn't involved? And in this situation, the answer unequivocally is absolutely yes. I've actually, when he lived in the tri-state area, actually been to his house. I remember that. Okay. And Luigi, we have him in, right? He's in the room now, right? Okay. All right. He's a Howard grad. He's a hit man. He's a Grammy-winning producer. He's probably got, I don't know why there aren't any around him, but he has over 30 plus plaques and probably been involved with over 50 million records that have been sold worldwide. If you know the song Hypnotize by B.I.G, surprisingly, a lot of people don't know this. If you know the song Where I'm From by Jay-Z, you definitely heard this one. You know Love Like This from Faith Evans. You might not know this, but you should. Money, Power, and Respect, and also Been Around the World. He's smiling. He's like, yeah, I did do those. But behind the beat is a brilliant mind, a storyteller, survivor, a culture builder. That's probably what you're building for your name as well, too. This is, everybody, Ron Amen Ra Lawrence.
Yes, sir.
All right, my guy. How have you been?
I've been good. So I'm trying to think back. You said you've been to my place. Was I in Mount Vernon? Was I in Brooklyn? Was I in Jersey?
You were in Jersey.
Okay.
This is when I say this, you'll get it. This is when you just finished working on Kells, okay? And we were starting to work on Imagine.
I was living in Jersey.
And you was living in Jersey, and we would and at that time, this is when me, you, and D-Dot, we were pretty much speaking or seeing each other pretty much like once a week, or all over. We just cross paths all the time. Mm-hmm. And you said when we work on Imagine, you said, I want to send you a couple of ideas, but come through and let me see what you think.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and I came through, and you actually brought me into your domicile, and You asked, I sat in the middle of all the records, and we were talking, and you remember, because Imagine at that time was a new group, and we were trying to, and we said we were trying to establish their sound, and you were very invested in what that was going to be. And remember, I told you, I said, we're going to have Keith Murray on the record, whatever it is, and we just need you to come what you want to come with off of that. And you gave me 2 or 3 answers, and remember back then, you guys were I clearly were untouchable when it came to what you were doing. I was just like, just tell me what you're going to do. Okay. It wasn't so much that I like or dislike. So the reason why I say we developed a professional relationship is because you definitely gave me the respect as the A&R person, okay, and wanted to deliver to the label, if you will, okay. But yeah, I did come to Jersey.
Okay. So many people came to that house, and I always run into somebody. I was in your basement. I was talking to, one of the producers of was it the Godfather of Harlem?
Oh, okay. Marquand? You said what, Marquand?
Yeah.
Okay.
He said he's been to my house. I don't remember that. How was it?
Yeah, Marquand. And Marquand's literally related to Bumpy Johnson.
Okay.
Yeah, that was part of the onus of him getting the show put out there.
Right. We're cool now, but I didn't remember him. I didn't remember him back then.
Now, Ron, you
somebody.
Yeah, how fast, how fast was the world moving in those days and times to kind of remember everybody?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That type of thing. No disrespect to anybody. I got guys that come up to me and says, "Yeah, I was an intern for you." I was like, "You were what? You did what? When was this? I don't recall this at all."
Right.
Okay. I tell you, I remember you told me to take the reels down to Bad Boy Studio. I did. So those things definitely happen, man. But you see, Goju Nation, this is not me looking for guests. These are people who I know. This is our ecosphere. We was in this space doing it for real. You good, sir? Family's good? Everything's okay?
Everything's good.
Okay. Before I interview you, because I want to make sure that I bracket this, okay? Give the people, give the world a little bit of kind of what space you're in now, what you're working on, what your passion is now. If there's anything that people need to kind of look to where you are, what you're doing. So I want to make sure we get that in there a couple of times before we get back into what we were doing. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Well, lately I've been dabbling into the AI field, artificial intelligence, and so if you go on my social media platform, Facebook and Instagram, you would see my work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's doing pretty well. A lot of my pieces have gone viral, and I'm loving what I do. I'm loving it. It's like a second love. You got music, and then you got technology. So.
Do you have the passion? Is the passion similar to you producing as far as how it feels?
Oh, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I'm hands-on. I'm very creative, and it takes a lot of thinking and a lot of applying.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to music production, and when you have to create visually, you have to edit and things like that, and write the stories. So, they both kind of similar in a sense. Different but similar. One is audio and one is visual. But,
right.
But the visual also deals with audio and storytelling. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What I've appreciated with what you sent me and what I've seen is you're diving into the layers of the culture, not just saying what the culture is. So, for example, we could talk about beats, rhymes, graffiti, and DJing, but Ron Lawrence is talking about the coat culture.
Well,
okay.
Everything is based on my experience.
Mm-hmm.
There's one thing to talk about, MCing, breakdancing, graffiti, DJ, whatever. We know about that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the experience. It's how I grew up, what I did, what I saw through the eyes of me, and I'm retelling it. Those who probably forgot, don't remember, or would like to relive it again. A lot of these stories have been kind of buried in our minds because it's something that we've experienced in the past and we've kind of forgotten about. Yeah, so rather than doing a typical stories that we already know about. I love to tell a story based on an experience, and that's what you're getting when you see my stuff.
I mean, like I said, and the way that it impacts, I'm speaking for myself, is that if you're around the culture, you kind of tap into that. That's absolutely a significant part of what's going on. That's why I brought up like the culture of what was done. Yeah, but them bomber coats and them sheepskin coats was just as much of it as anything else. Yeah, man, them hoop earrings was just as much of it as anything else. Almost as if the culture is the culture without it. That's the part that I like about it.
Right. Well, the thing is, you have the so-called 4 elements, right? But what's more important to me is fashion. Like, why was that never part of the 4 elements when it should have been? Like,
Or it's the 5th element, right?
Well, not to take away from some of the other elements, but first and foremost, before any of that existed, we dressed the part. We've been doing that forever, right? And then the music was just the soundtrack to who we are, how we dress, how we talked, and how we lived, right? And then you had a few who maybe break dance. You had a few who may have done graffiti or whatever. But for the most part, 80% of us, we had a dress code.
Sure.
We didn't, not everybody did graffiti. I would say maybe a small percentage of the population did graffiti and a small percentage breakdance, right? But 80% of us dressed a certain way. We all wore Lees. We all wore Adidas. We had Pumas. We had a nameplate. We wore a Kank. I mean, that's just, we had a bomber. When you walked outside, you had to look the part or you wasn't the part.
Right? Or you was. Say that again, sir. If you didn't look the part, you wasn't a part. That's a significant statement, right? You had if you couldn't afford the coat, you better have some British Walkers on. You better have something.
Right.
Something.
That's right.
Okay.
And not everybody was an MC, and not everybody was a DJ. Right.
That's right. That's right. You had to have something, right? You had to have. We can go on forever, but this is good, man. We'll come back to it, man. But I'm glad that's a good way to bracket it because us putting time into that speaks to the passion of what you're dealing with. So I appreciate that. Okay. So we're going to get into the qualified now, Luigi. That's the Q, the Q, the Q, the Q. And we're going to speak to your foundation. Okay. First question. How did your upbringing and your musical DNA motivate you to want to be involved in music? And speak to your cultural background when you speak to me, you answer that question.
You know, I grew up in East Elmhurst, Queens. And I was around the DJ culture. My brother was a DJ. And he DJ'd in the parks, right? So I experienced the park jam culture very early on in the 70s in Queens, New York. And this was happening throughout the 4 boroughs. There was a DJ culture in the parks. When the DJ came out, bought the equipment, had the turntables, had the speakers, and everybody came out to have a good time. That was my experience. So I understood what the 2 turntables in the mixer was. I understood what the equipment was about, and I understood records. Yeah. So it was easy for me to transform when the sound of hip hop came into perspective, right? So are you talking 78, 79? You know, you're hearing all these tapes and stuff, and then all of a sudden, Rappers Delight drops. Yeah, so it was an easy transformation for me. I was involved in rap groups early on, so I started out as an MC. So I went from a DJ to an MC, right? And yeah, which led me into getting a record deal later on in life, and then from that point, moving into production.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I like the concise answers. I like that. You're making this free flow very easily. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you. Next qualified question. Howard University changed a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
How did it shape you as a thinker as well as a producer?
Well, Howard taught me how to make decisions, spirit of moment decisions, I should say. Right? And being in a comfortable situation where it can lead to a path where it changes your life, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when I first, I never planned to go to Howard University. That was never in my plans.
Really?
Yeah, I was originally wanting to be a rapper, MC.
Mm-hmm.
My sister applied to Howard. She got accepted, right? And she filled out my application. And I got
She planned your future for you. She planned your future for you.
exactly. So when I get the acceptance letter, then my mom is like, "What do you want to do?" So I have 2 weeks to decide. I'm going to stay in New York and try to be an MC. I'll go to Howard University. At the time, things weren't really going the way I intended. I had friends that were had their foot in the music business at early on. Like I grew up with Herbie Lovebug. I grew up with Kid and Play and these guys. And so Herbie had Salt and Pepper. And Kid and Play was just starting off. But I had nothing going on, so I had to make a decision if I wanted to stay and follow their footsteps and see if I could make it, which wasn't really at the time. It wasn't guaranteed, right? But I knew, okay, here's education on this side. Maybe I could probably figure out how I could reinvent myself because I was kind of lost, at that age, trying to figure it out. Yeah, so I took that leap of faith. I opened up that door. And I went to Howard, and I think that was the best thing I could have ever done because it put me on a path, which opened up the door to my career, right?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
That was something. So it taught me how. It opened up my eyes and taught me how to not be afraid to make spur of the moment decisions. To be in an uncomfortable situation, right? Because what that does is it makes you grow. Now, if I would have stayed in New York, I would have been comfortable, and I wouldn't have explored. So I wouldn't have learned that lesson, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right. That skill set of having to think on your feet and that beginning of a survivalist thought process, no matter what that is, whether that's literal food, whether that's literal education, whether that's literal decisions you have to make. Do I go home or do I stay this weekend to get this done? Right. Those types of thought processes are not things you would have to worry about if you were just home, if you will. Okay. So your beginning survival skills in life come into play when you go to a secondary education place because everything's not guaranteed.
It's not guaranteed, but then you have to fit for yourself. So now you have to grow because now you're not home anymore. Right? So never be afraid of change.
Well, you learn that, right? You learn that because until you go through it, when you go through it to get to it, to come out on the other end, then you realize it. If you don't go through it, then you're like, I don't know what that really represents, and you can be cautious. But you're right about that. But we're talking similar because we all had to make those type of sacrifices.
Right, all through my life, I've done just that. Learning that from Howard, I've always put myself in a position where, okay, let me remove myself from this situation and try to shift something else and see what happens.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, I'm digging a little bit deep here, okay? Because I want you to use this experience to answer this question. Talk about your rap group, Two Kings in the Cypher, a little bit. What did those early group dynamics teach you that you still use to this day as you proceeded to succeed as a producer? Like, what did that dynamic teach you? And speak to the relationship a little bit.
Well, Two Kings in the Cypher was a rough patch at the time because getting a record deal signed under a production company that was signed to a label was rough because at the time when you coming in, we were signed to RCA, so you dealt with a label that didn't know anything about rap unless you were with Jive. So you signed to RCA. You got Skip Miller London, and these guys. Old school heads don't give a damn about rap music. So they're just playing you left and right. Right? So that was it, and we had to fight just so we could survive on that label. And eventually once the production once the label deal got dropped, we got dropped. All right.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, but I still wanted to rhyme. But I felt that, okay, well, if I can't make it as a rapper, then maybe I could produce for the rappers that I love. Maybe I could see my vision through them. Right? Yeah. So that was a lesson that it taught me that, okay, well, if you if it doesn't work a certain way, then find another way to make it work. Right? So the MC route didn't work, but the production route can work. Maybe I may not be rapping, but now I'm producing for the rapper.
Okay.
And I'm still getting production credit. I'm still getting royalties. I'm still getting the same things that the artist will get. The only difference is I'm not all up in the video. You know? Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's important for the ones that want to do this, to kind of recognize how you did the Muhammad Ali and you bar weaved, rather than saying I'm just getting knocked out within a certain circumstance. Because like you said, when they dropped the label at that point in time, you were non-concerned at that point, right? Labels gone, everything associated with the label is gone. So that's a good answer. That's exactly why I answered that question, to kind of get a little bit of that directional answer. What type of equipment were you working on back then? And did you have to finesse because you didn't have, say, the top edge or the leading drum machine or whatever that equipment may be at that time? Like, how did you work that dynamic with your first equipment? And what were you working on back then?
Well,
It's a good question.
when I first started off, I didn't have equipment. I was I used to come with the ideas. And I would sit around producers and I would give them some of the records, some of the ideas that I thought was hot. So, and I had gotten some things placed. I won't say it's ghost production, but it was more so like, handheld records. I wouldn't know what to call that, right? But it's it's an idea that you're contributing to. It's not production, but it's you're part of the contribution, because you're lending ideas to a producer to create something, right? So that's how I started off. And when I saw the success of that, I knew my ideas were grand, right? So I was able to get a check out of one experience, and I bought a drum machine. So
What was that drum machine?
it was an MPC 60. So I worked on, I contributed some ideas to Salt and Pepper. There was matter of fact, there was a song that I did called "Hyped on the Mic." That was my first attempt on production. And a friend of mine had the MPC 60, and I went to his house, and he worked with the drum machine, and I gave him the ideas, and I told him what to do. Right. So once the beat was created, I handed the floppy disk to Herbie Lovebug, and he used it on the album, and I got a check. The check was like maybe $7,500, and I invested in an MPC 60. And the reason why I got the MPC 60 was because that was the drum machine that I actually saw and learned from. Not learn from, but I actually said, okay, well, this is a drum machine that I would like to use. I didn't know much about, at the time, everybody was using the SP12. That was the drum machine of choice. Me, I bought that MPC 60. And the sound at the time wasn't the MPC 60. It was that grungy, the grungy sound where they would put filters on records. And the MPC couldn't do that. Right? They were using 950 modules and stuff like that. MPC had a cleaner sound. So it was a little different, because for the time, it was hard. The beats really couldn't conform to what was going on for that era. But I think eventually producers started catching on and started switching over. I think I was a little bit ahead of the time with the MPC 60.
Okay.
Producers started, because when the filter era started dying out, people started going to the MPC 60 and the MPC 3000. So I invested in that, and then I got a ASR 10.
Okay.
And the ASR 10 was it gave you that similar sound that the 950 had. Right? I was using a combination of both. The MPC 60 was more so for R&B because it had it had a MIDI connection where you could connect a keyboard to the drum machine, right? While sequencing. Those drum machines prior to that didn't have that. The SP12 and the 1200s, you couldn't sync a keyboard together with that with MIDI. That's why a lot of those producers weren't using keyboards back then. They were just face samplers. But the MP allowed you to sync your keyboard. So I was able to play my bass lines and stuff like that together with the production.
And do you still have a production? Do you still have a production set up in your house now?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, but it's more computer based.
Okay. There's no MPC system. There's no MPC drum machine in the household, or is it an advanced version of an MPC drum machine that's in your household?
It's a later version.
Later version. So the foundation of where you started is still in your home. Just updated models.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. That answers that question. All right. So we're done with the qualified section. Before we get to verified, one of the things that the viewers like, they like when I do story time. I've told some of my stories. They like to hear the stories because the stories kind of give, for lack of a better phrase, they know we ain't guessing. Right? We're not out here just playing around. We actually, because we can say stuff where if you really know what's going on, you know what that person just said. So I got 2 story time sections for you. Here's your first one, and you take a second to think about it. Okay. Tell us the story of the moment you went from college MC to hitman producer. Who made the call? Like, what was that environment like? And what did that day feel like, or that time in your life feel like, when you literally knew the transition was happening?
When I lost that record deal. When I lost that record deal, that's when I knew, okay, well, maybe I need to stick to production. Because I was making beats. I produced the whole album. Right. And I did it out of necessity. I didn't produce the beats because I wanted to be a producer. I produced the beats because we had no producer. Right. So, but my thing was I wanted to be a rapper. But I felt like, okay, wow, I loved it just as much as being an MC. And when I got a taste of being a rapper or going on the road, I didn't really like it as much. Yeah, I didn't really care too much for it. So, I started gravitating to production.
And what was that transition from you? Because now you are a producer, if you follow me, right? So what was that transition from being a producer to knowing that you were a go-to producer in the game? Like, what was that record? What was that transition? What was that call? What was that meeting? Was it in the studio? Was it a record you played? Like, what was that? Give me that moment.
I mean, I was producing records prior to Bad Boy. Like, I produced records I did a record with Positive K. I did a record for Adore. Passed away. I did a record for LOG and the Bulldogs. And then got to Rakim. Record never came out. And then Sugar, What's Up Star? That was Sweet Tea. So the phones weren't ringing. It wasn't like, excuse me. It wasn't like people were calling me or anything like that. I was going to people, submitting tracks, trying to get on projects. That's what that was, right? So then we dropped Tracy Lee, The Thing, Go Rock a Party. Hypnotize drops. I get phone calls. First person to call me is Alicia Keys' management. They
Who
want to
now
make
manages her? The same guy that manages her now, right? That same production company, that group, that management group that manages her.
right. So,
Yeah.
so Jeff Robinson, I think his name is?
Jeff Robinson. Yeah.
I get a call from them. We got an artist named 16-year-old girl signed to Sony Records. I'm like, okay, cool. Send her to the crib. Let's work. Yeah. So that was the first time when that record dropped. That's when the phone started ringing. So I'd say for about a good year in, just working in-house, no phone calls, nothing, just making beats. The minute you get that hit record, phones just start ringing off the hook.
So it was Tracy Lee, the theme, which I remember that record, and then when every booty with a coochie bought a, when every cutie with a booty bought a coochie came out, okay, that's when it became Earth to became Jupiter. You were on Earth, then became Jupiter, different planet, different phone calls. Every cutie with a booty bought a coochie. I said that line 1 million times. I thought that was a magnificent thing. So that's a good one. And I remember telling you this. I remember because we know the sample is oh my God, I'm such a jazz guy. Why can't I remember the name of the guy that did the sample for Hypnotize? Herb Alpert. I remember if you think about at that time the records that Bad Boy was making, right? And we knew they were they were sampled, enough of them were sample generated. Okay, I don't want to sit there and say we're fully sample generated because there's many hit songs that were not samples, right? But I remember when Herb Alpert was sampled, I remember feeling very vindicated about the depth of looking for strong samples, because that one required a different level of visual to see what that could be, if you follow me, because the tempo of that does not speak originally to being a up-tempo hip-hop record. You follow me? Okay. If you hear that record in its initial state, you pick up, if you hear the original song, you grab your woman, you do a slow dance. You put on the dance, you do a slow dance.
Yes.
Okay. So I remember saying in my head, like, to take that slow jazz record and to turn that into an up-tempo club record, not change the tempo 10 beats per minute, if you follow me, okay? Everything had to be done within the production value of keeping it where it is, just making it what it needs to be. That was a different production thought process. I remember respecting that and saying, it's not just a loop with drums underneath it. There's a perception here that has to be done to make this what this needs to be.
But not only too, there were the bass line on top of it.
Yep.
It wasn't just a sample.
Yes, of course. I again, one of the hidden gems that people don't really realize is as much music that was played on and over these samples, and not just leaning on the sample itself.
That's what made it special. People thought they were just straight jacks. And there were questions that went there. Absolutely. A lot of records are 48 tracks, believe it or not.
Absolutely. I remember having an argument with one of our colleagues that we both know.
We worked on Imagine. You saw how we did that.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying that I remember with a colleague of ours that worked at that company. I'm not going to say who it is. Mm-hmm. They would argue with me because I would say, you're not hearing the bass line on top of it. And they said, no, they're just sampling it and doing the drum thing. I said, I'm going to show you I said, you're going to do a song one day, and I'm going to show you what it is. And you're going to say, oh my God, I didn't realize this. And I remember jumping up and down when More Money, More Problems came out. Okay. Mm. Because the bass player on More Money, More Problems is doing his own thing. Because I said, this lick that he's doing, this drop lick he's doing right here, is not on the original song. Okay. I said, that's why I'm trying to tell you, they've been doing this all along. Yeah, that is part of the gem. Yeah. I got one more question because I want to verify this. Okay. I remember having this conversation because remember, watch this. I'm going to verify something, Goju Nation. Remember when we would have the album listening sessions when the album was done, right? Remember those? And there would be invites to other executives that would come to the studio. And we would all listen to Fate's album. We would all listen to 112's album. He's nodding his head. Like those were events. There was like you had to be on a certain list to be able to come and see those things, right? You had to be a certain thing, right? And we would be hanging out, and we would see each other at these things, right? And I used to say to myself, I said, wait a minute, what board are you mixing this record on? because I would hear a Black Rob record, if you follow me, right? And I would say, as hard as this beat is, it's very musically mixed. And I remember somebody saying, one of the secrets that people are not saying is that at the studio, there was a Neve board and there was the, what's the name of the other board? SSL board. And they would, I would say they would, so they would take the R&B records and mix them on the SSL board. So it have a harder kick to it because the SSL board is more of a hip hop board per se. Okay. And they would take the hip hop records and mix them on the Neve board to give it a warmer feel. So it feel more like an R&B record. So the records be more radio accessible, but still keep their edge. Can you confirm that for me, sir?
Yeah, yeah. That's almost correct. Yeah, but sometimes it depends. You know,
it depends. But it was on the table. It wasn't something that was not on the table. That was a conscious thought process.
Right, depending on what you were looking for. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Love Like This, a song that you produced, may have been mixed on an SSL board. Is that about? That sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Money, Power, Respect was an SSL too.
SS. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I was saying.
But
I'm just enjoying the conversation. I see you smiling there. You're reminiscing on these small little gems that people not paying attention to because that was a thing, right? An SSL board compared to a Neve board, and you would see all the R&B records would always be mixed on a quote Neve board. LA and Babyface lived and died by a Neve board. You know what I mean? That type of thing. But you couldn't tell Premier nothing about an SSL board. That's all he knew, and that's all he wanted to see. So I just wanted to bring that to attention. So thank you for that, sir. That's for the culture. The culture needs to pay that. That's for the history of the culture. All right? All right, sir. So we done the qualify. We did story time. We're now doing the verify section. The V. Thank you, Luigi. Let's talk about hypnotizing. Maybe we don't. Okay? Let me see if I get the question right. No, we spoke about hypnotize. We're not going to do that. Okay? Here we go. On Love Like This for Faith, were you chasing a vibe, or because of the music at that time, were you building on a formula?
Probably more so a formula. Yeah, it was a formula. That record originally that record, I had R&B and I had hip hop in mind. When I originally did that track, it's crazy. Most of those records were. That's why because they a lot of those records, those R&B records that I did, they have a hip hop feel because I had hip hop in mind when I made them. Those records weren't made for R&B, but it just so happened that the vision that was seen on those records, it was like, wow, we can sing over them. Because that's what made it special. These you can remove the artist off of those records and you could put a rapper on it and it'll be a rap record, right? It was like, yo, nah, let's put a singer on that record. That's what made it special.
Yeah. Okay. So that formula.
Yeah.
Money, Power, and Respect. The intro to Money, Power, and Respect is probably one of the top, I'll say probably one of the top 15 intros in hip hop history from a standpoint of, exactly what's about to happen the second you hear the first two notes, right? The second, the first two, like, when this record's about to come on. What was the vibe like in the room when that track was played for the artists in that room and they heard that intro and heard that beat drop? What was that like?
I wasn't there when the Locks heard it. Yeah. So I don't know what their reaction was. I remember telling them when I mixed the record, I remember telling them that y'all need to hear this record. We were at Justin's. They hadn't heard the final mix, right?
Okay.
And I think they had a record out. I think the record was called "If You Think I'm Jiggy." That was the single that they came with. When they dropped that single, Money, Power, Respect wasn't finished. It was just an unmixed record. Record was like didn't even have production on it. Like it was a chopped. And the crazy thing was they rhymed to a chopped up sample that had nothing else on it. There was no snares. There was no bass line. There was not, and they rhymed on the record. They did all the rhymes. This is the crazy thing. A lot of artists back then, they trusted us so much. And even with Jay-Z, when I did Where I'm From,
Mm-hmm.
the record didn't sound like that when he did the lyrics on them.
They rhymed to a concept. They rhymed
They
to a
rhymed
concept
There
or
was
a piece.
nothing on it. There was no drums. There was no bass line. There was no pop, 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 pop. None of that existed.
Mm.
Right? But that was good because what it did was it you know, it helped me become more creative. Right?
So almost as if to say that the beat wasn't the canvas for the rhymes became the canvas for the beat. Because you would hear them say certain things, and you would say, based upon what he just said, I'm doing this production-wise. This will make a great drop. I want to use this chord, this drum line, this beat. It will sound so much hotter here than where it was before because of what they have said.
Right. So if you listen to Where I'm From is like a soundtrack record. Right?
Yes.
And it's that way because of what he's saying on the record.
And you dictated that and said, this is where I have to go because of how he is saying.
Exactly.
This needs to sound like this needs to be his shaft, if you will, his intro song to his movie, rather than a song he's recording.
Right. So when Power and Respect was done, you know, the crazy thing was the studio was booked to mix the record. Right? And I got a call from Tony Maserati. So he's listening to the mix. He's got all the artists, you know, Lil Kim, you got DMX, you got the Locks. Everybody's on this 24 track, and he's listening to it. And he's like, "Well, damn, okay, there's nothing else here. This just you got all the vocals here, but this the sample. There's nothing else but the sample. So he's got one track to mix."
Oh, right. At a mastering studio, that you basically gave me nothing to master.
So I get a phone call at 9:00 at night, and he's like, "Yo, this record, I can't do nothing with this. You gotta come in here. You gotta fix this record up." But nobody told me that they were mixing the record. If I would have known that, I would have had this stuff prepared. Right? I was living in Jersey at the time, and I was in bed when I get the call. So I was like, damn, all right. So I had to get out of bed, and I had to fly down to Midtown Tunnel and go to the studio and finish the record. And
that night.
Yeah.
Let me make sure I understand
it's
this.
a good thing I got that call because that record wouldn't have came out the way it did.
So the record was underproduced, and it was at the mastering studio. Ready to be mixed and mastered. Yeah. You had to overnight, not take 2-3 days, not come up with ideas back and forth. You had to, on the spot, fill in the instrumentation, the drum patterns, the whole thing, and make it and on some level mix it so it could be ready for mastering.
Yeah.
Overnight. Yeah. So you did the job. So you did, for lack of a better phrase, let's say it takes you 2 days to make a beat. Let's say it takes 1 day to record vocals on a great day, right? And then the next day you mix, right? So let's say on an average day with everything going well, your production day, it takes 4 days to make the record, for argument's sake, right? So you did 4 days work overnight.
Yeah, because the track was just a concept. That's it. It was just of what something could be, right?
Right.
There were ideas. So what I would do a lot of times was I would put ideas on a deck, and I wouldn't finish them because they were just ideas.
Right.
Not thinking that an MC would even rhyme over them, but they did. Yeah.
So that is that's some miraculous stuff. That's right there. I'm saying I need to reiterate that. Like you did 4 days. You did 4 days work in one night.
You can't do that today. You couldn't. I mean, I don't think anybody else did that. When you stepped in the room, and that was only done at Bad Boy. You couldn't go outside.
You are 1,000% right. In the order of how things are done, it wouldn't even have gotten to that place of even arriving. They'd be like, the record, we're not doing this. This record, it wouldn't be on the project. It would say this record doesn't exist.
But do you understand when we did Imagine? It was like that too.
We sure did. We sure did.
I had to finish that record while we were mixing it. Do you remember that?
I remember that because again, we were side by side on that one because remember, I'm gonna say something you're gonna remember. Remember how the label was acting like a label? Remember, follow me on this one, okay? And then you and Derek and Sean said, "Look, man, y'all are driving us crazy. Y'all acting like that's not how we do things around here, right?" And I said, just talk to me. I got you. Remember I said, work through me. I'll deal with them. Just work through me. I'll deal with them because they were driving y'all crazy with when, where, how, where do you want the boys? I was like, this is not how Frank Sinatra makes records. They do things differently around here. Okay. That's not that way. I remember that conversation. You're absolutely right about that. Let me ask you this one as I spin through. Let me spin through this one. Because here's something a lot of people don't know. Walk me through working with Aretha Franklin.
Oh, yeah. That was something else. Yeah, how did I get that job? I had this track that I did, right? And I recorded it for this artist named Sarah Divine. And I think she was signed to, she may have been signed to MCA. She was under, KP. And,
KP, yeah.
KP.
KP.
So we recorded the song. And it was her song. She was supposed to get the song. And for some reason, I don't know what happened to the artist, why they didn't release her. L.A. Reid got a hold of it. And I remember we were trying to get it on. We tried to take the record to give it to Whitney Houston, but Clive Davis didn't like it. L.A. Reid heard it and flipped out and was like, "Yo, he wants that. He want, that's how. This is how I got to meet him." Aretha Franklin heard the song and they flew me out to Detroit. Went to her house. Went to her house because she didn't like to fly, so we had to record. We had to record the record in her dining room.
In her dining, yeah.
Crazy story.
Yeah. That's what it was for her back then. She didn't like to fly. The producers had to come to her. Her studio was set up a little bit, for lack of a better phrase, it was a little bit old school.
It was all right. So we had a big mic, one of them Sony mics, and $2,000 mics.
Boom mics.
Set up with the big blankets. Moved the tape to the side, and then you had a Pro Tools rig guy who was in the hallway. Right?
In the hallway.
Recording studio.
How did she take? Did she take direction well? Because I know how she's notorious as a diva. How did she take direction when it came to do vocals and stuff like that?
It was tough. We were bumping heads. But I had to tell her because based on how the demo went, is usually when I have a demo, I kind of follow the guidelines of how people sing certain things. And so there were a couple of corrections and things that we needed to do. For the most part, we kept the original vocals, the background vocals from Sarah Divine. We kept those. All Aretha had to do was sing the lead. That was it.
Just sing lead, right?
She sang on top of the chorus. The background vocals and all that stuff, it wasn't her. Because if we would have had her do it, it would have sounded very old school because her voice texture.
Yes.
The way they recorded vocals back then, they didn't do it the way we did it. They would go in the studio, and I saw that because I had worked with Luther Vandross also. They'll put 4 people in the studio at a time and say, "Okay, sing this,"
and that's the background vocals.
1, 2, 3, 4, and they'll just knock it out. The way we did it, we sang.
Each person was a track. Each vocal was a track.
Exactly, and we do it a track at a time. So we'll do first harmony, second, third, like that, and
back it that way, right?
Right. Yeah. So in working with Aretha, I didn't do that because we just kept background vocals.
Yeah, you had to stack. You had to stack. You had to stack homies. You just need her leads.
We just need the leads. There were certain things certain notes that wasn't sounding. It's not like she was off key. She just sang it wrong. Right.
Got you.
So I had to correct her, and I had proof of the demo. Right. So there was a little bump of the heads at first, but when I had to kind of show her how things went, then she kind of eased up. But it was cool because it made her feel like, okay, I'm human, because I wasn't afraid to give her direction. Right. So I think she kind of gained respect for me for that.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
It's always interesting when you deal with artists, producers as well too, that direction and thought process and creativity could be one type of thing, but where you always can meet the minds is when you musically make sense to each other, right? That always brings it down to we can talk, we can deal, because it's almost like I respect your ear, you respect my ear, because we're speaking the same language, if you follow me, more so than you're speaking English, I'm speaking Spanish. It's like we're both speaking English, so now we kind of can connect there. So that's what's happened. I had a similar experience with Kels with that. We had a musical conversation, and our dynamic as far as relationship became completely different, because he basically says, you know what you're talking about. You're not guessing, if that makes any sense. Okay. So, Ron, I think that's good, man. That's the verified part. That's the verified part. So that brings us to our second story time. And I know the audience is dying to hear this, so they would love to hear something like this. They want me to ask this question. Share with us, however you want to do this, you be creative. Share with us any story you could tell us about B.I.G. inside the studio, outside the studio, a personal story, interaction. Like, just give us something to give us a glimpse into the person that maybe not many people may know about him as an individual.
Yeah. Funny character, very funny. He hung out when he needed to. I remember the last time I saw Big was at a club, and he had crutches. So he went to the club in crutches, because he had broken his leg. Which told me that he still wanted to have a good time. It's not like I'm gonna stay home because I got a broken leg,
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah, while he was healing, he was in crutches, and he came to the club, chilling, and it wasn't too long after he passed away. But Big, Big was on. He was walking around with crutches for a minute because he was heavy, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. Just from weight distribution standpoint, you had to have the crutches, right? Now we know about the lyrics. Give me percentage-wise, how much did he write the hooks? We know he wrote the verses, but did he write the hook to Hypnotize and other songs? Like, who's writing his hooks? Would you say?
He wrote the.
So he's okay. So he's right.
That's the chick from Total.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's doing the vocals, of course. But the writing of the actual books, that's him as well too. So he's writing everything from nuts to bolts. He's not just writing just the verses.
Yeah, he's everything.
That's important to state, man, because I mean, a lot of times, sometimes
a lot of MCs can't write chorus.
That's why I was headed. And the second part I was going to say is a lot of times producers put hooks in the songs for the artist. So that's why I'm adding to his genius factor. I think that he's writing the hooks and the verses.
Yeah, that became popular with Pharrell and those guys.
That's why I was headed, because within that era, if you will, right? Because the big three in the 80s, Luigi, in the 80s, the big three were Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, LA and Babyface, and Teddy Riley. That was the big three. In the 90s, the big three, and end of it will put Kanye. But in the 90s, the big three was the Hitman producing team, Timbaland, and Pharrell. That's who the three go-to was. Those are the big three back then. So that's what I'm saying. Timbaland would do hooks, right? So and Pharrell and them would be creative to put the hooks in. So that's why I was stating that I wanted that differentiation, if you follow me, okay, of how some of the artists
up to the facts.
Yeah. All right, well, I appreciate that. That's the certified, right? We did qualified, we did certified. Luigi, we on to the we did qualified, verified, right? So now we on the certified. That's the C, the C, and this is where we speak to Mr. Lawrence, now that you've spoken about your past, your present, now we're talking a little bit more legacy and where things are today. All right? Here's my first question. If your sound had a passport, take a second to think about this. If your sound had a passport, what cities would be stamped on your passport?
Oh, come on, man.
Okay. Now, when you say New York, you say New York with each borough having its own individual stamp, or it's just one big New York stamp?
One big New York.
All right, I'll take that one. Which one of the artists that you worked with, when they respected you or praised you or respected you, which one meant the most to you personally when they gave you your flowers?
Probably Faith. Say.
So Faith was your wow factor, like, wow, I really. Now, this is a person that's worked with Aretha Franklin and Luther Vandross now. So for him to say Faith, that speaks volumes of what that may have represented. So let me connect some dots. So this speaks to, if I'm wrong, correct me. This speaks to the success of Love Like This, and then her having a moment with you based upon that success. Am I guessing properly or am I incorrect?
Well, I mean, yeah, but I think before that too, we just fought.
Okay, got it. You had that dynamic. Okay. My next one. Goju Nation, Mr. Lawrence, he scored the Bamboozled soundtrack for Spike Lee. Didn't think I was gonna bring that one up, did you? Okay. How did scoring change your approach to design, production, and what you did musically? You didn't think I was gonna bring that one up, did you?
Yeah. It's funny because throughout my history of just creating music, there's always been challenges. Like, well, what can I do next? Because I came into the game as a hip hop producer, right? I didn't come in as an R&B producer. I came in to make hip hop beats. But my challenge was, can I do R&B? Right?
Gotcha.
Okay. So when I was able to reach that hurdle, and this is now I'm doing Luther Vandross, Aretha Franklin, and I could do Beyonce, so I could just, So then it's like, okay, what could I do next? Soundtracks. Let's see how I can attack back. So I sat close with Spike Lee, and we worked together, and he told me what he was looking for, and I had to create it. But it was unique because for the first time I'm working with a film producer, and and we're working side by side, and he has scenes in his mind of what he wants. Okay, in this particular scene, I need this particular track to go this way. In that particular scene, I need this. Okay, so I got these guys they call the Mau Mau Clan. I need a theme record for them. Right? So so it taught me that you're dealing with a different angle when you're dealing with a film producer, because now you have to think about, you're not just making a beat for an artist to rap to, you're making music to fit the scene of a script, right? Yeah, so that was pretty cool. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Working on soundtracks, because I've had as well too on the executive side, compared to working with artists, is definitely like working with horses compared to working with zebras. Because their creative mind has no thought process on if it's good or bad. It's all on, does it fit we need to do right here? Exactly. And within that fitting, if it's great after that, that's almost a bonus.
Because whatever's going on in the director's mind, he already has it set on his vision of what he's thinking about, how he's thinking. Right?
And that's what makes it. Now, with Spike Lee, you're fitting the scenery, you're soundtracking the movies. So that's different. When you work on like movie soundtracks that have albums associated with, the music has to fit and it also has to be a hit. that becomes difficult. We got to deal with the label.
Based on the lyrics, right?
Yeah, that becomes a little bit of a pain, to be honest with you. It takes a little bit longer to get things done that way. Of all your credits, which one would you want people to study as part of your legacy, say 20 years from now? Or if they're going to look at one of my songs, I'm going to look at this one and pay attention to how and analyze how that one was done. Which one speaks to you the most in that way?
Man, you asked me all these hard questions, man. I can't answer that one.
Come on, man. This is why we're here. Industry rule number 4080. This is what we give them. Okay. Okay. You know what? If you can't give me one, give me three. That would all fall in the same category. So you have to say which one's your best child.
Okay,
You say these are my three favorite children.
you can say where I'm from. You can say money, power, and respect. You can say hypnotize.
Okay. Okay. What I like about money, power, respect, and what I like about where I'm from, which speaks volumes to your discography, is that for all those that want to say he's loop based, those are not loop based in the sense of traditional loops that come from popular records, if you will, right? It's not taking the main melody from a quote song and saying that's the hook for the hip hop song. These definitely have, like you said before, where I'm from is soundtrack driven.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. From the idea of how you're going to produce it, that's a different mindset. As we've learned, money, power, and respect was created after the fact.
Right.
Okay, of what you're to do creatively. So that speaks a lot to it. Okay. Let me see. I got a couple more here. How do you feel? No, this is a good question for Ron Lawrence, the person. In this age, now that we know exactly what that generation represented music like, right? How do you feel knowing that you were actually literally one of the cultivators of the culture at that time? Do you realize that? Like for example, and I say this respectfully, right? And this, I'm saying what it is, not what I feel. The reason why there are 90s babies, right? That term is basically because calling it what it is, the next two generations of music don't compete. Okay. And those generations are going back to what was good. It's almost like saying the 80s and the 70s suck. So we like Motown, if you follow me. Okay.
So these kids are sampling 90s records now.
Yeah, this is where we're headed. So with that thought process, have you even recognized that you're a curator? You're literally one of the gatekeepers and curators musically of the culture. How does that strike you when you hear something like that?
Well, history repeats itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
When from the 90s, we were digging for the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you're talking 2 decades removed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking 90s, 2000s, 10, 20s, what was it, 30 years later?
Mm-hmm.
Now they're digging for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's just a repeat of history. The 90s thing is in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody looks at 90s like it's this big nostalgic type of movement, right? Yeah, I don't know if you noticed that. But
again, when I see a 20-year-old saying I'm a 90s baby, I says that means when you were 10, your music sucked. That's what I basically tell them. I'm not being foul. I'm not saying they didn't count. I'm saying that for you to say I'm going further back than what I know to listen to music, that speaks to what you're listening to. See, because watch this. People from the 90s have respect for the 80s and the 70s. We don't say that was crap. Okay? We hear the name Shaka Khan, we bow down. Okay? We hear Lionel Richie's come in the room, we recognize him as a writer. That's the man that wrote We Are the World. Like, you know what I'm saying? That we do that instinctively. Okay. So when this generation do that, I say, I feel sorry for what you grew up with because you had to go back here. But that's okay. We got you. It's all good. It's all good. Let me ask you this. Okay. Have you ever regretted giving a beat away or one you did not give away?
No, I don't regret anything.
Okay.
But what I was kind of upset about was I didn't get to do the Men in Black.
That's another story for another day. Another story for another day. Yes, I remember that. What is your favorite non-famous beat that you've ever made? Like you thought your most unheralded beat that you've made. You're like, this beat's actually a lot better than people think.
I did this record for Lord Tariq and Peter Guns called My Time to Go. The production on that record is like just phenomenal. But it just never got the shine.
Man, No, what that wasn't. I can tell you right now, because remember, I'm in that building at that time when that happened. That was not your fault. They spent so much money to get that deal consummated and on that first single that by the time that was done, they basically spent an album's worth of budget, if you follow me, on that first single.
That's what killed it, right?
It had nothing to do with you. Okay. Remember they shot that video 2 times? Right? People don't know that. They shot that video 2 times. You know how much the average video cost back then? Okay.
Yeah.
That was a thing. Remember the cameos in that video? That cost money. That wasn't free. Right? Because they you know what I'm saying? They wasn't 50 Cent in the club. We were making them 50 Cent in the club, if you follow me at that point in time. So a lot of money was spent in a lot of areas that really handcuffed that project.
Oh, yeah, okay. I see. Now I understand.
This is why we were cool, man. Like I said, we've always been cool because when the company would act stupid, I say, Ron, here's what is going on. I'm not giving you what's not going on. Here's what they are doing. Based upon that, here's what we're going to do. Again, two cents of respect. This is why I wasn't disliked, if you follow me. He comes hang out with me, we'll get you some money and we'll do what we're dealing with. The other BS we'll kind of figure out. Let me see what else I got here, sir, as we close you out. Let me see. Here we go. Talk to the young producers out there, okay, and give them a gem they need to understand as they start chasing they start chasing placements and wanting to be on different projects. Give them some legacy advice to carry with them moving forward that can benefit them as they do their chase.
Yeah, make sure you got your paperwork right. Very important, you know. Make sure don't go in the studio unless you got something signed. You don't want to make that mistake because you don't want to work and then they tell you they don't want the track and you did work and you don't get paid. So yeah, make sure you get your paperwork together. It's very important. Get a good lawyer, get a good manager, get a good accountant, and you should be straight. Very important.
Mr. Lawrence, one more time. Let them know what you're currently working on project-wise, what your current passion is right now, and how they can find you and contact you based upon that, your current passion project.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook under Ron Lawrence. You can find me on IG under Ron Lawrence. You can also find me on TikTok under Ron Lawrence AI. Yeah, so that's like my new passion right now. I'm doing a lot of AI stuff. And hey, you know, just embarking into a new type of new lane, if you will, you know, venture, new technology, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah,
good, man. You can see the look on your face, how much it lights you up a little bit. It really does speak to you. Like you got a little different look on your face when you speak about it.
I love music
absolutely.
As much as I love music right now. I think it's important that we find things that that helps reinvent ourselves. Right? Sometimes you kind of need that next lane to kind of take you to the next level.
Right.
You know, I've done music for years, and I think now it's time to try something different. Not that I'm going to give up on music, but
of course,
I want to be able to spread my wings and do new things. And I think where the technology is heading right now, I think everybody should find a way where they can kind of fit in somewhere. Yeah, because the world's about to change.
Well, the world's currently changing right in front of our eyes, underneath our feet as we speak.
Time, that is.
It's happening in real time. But yeah, I agree with you. A friend, a colleague, a person I've done business with, Mr. Ron Amenrod Lawrence, man. It's been a pleasure. And I thank you so much for making time for me, man. Okay. I got something else I'm going to run by you, but I'll do that on our time offline. I got something I need you to bounce off of you from a concept standpoint and see if A, you want to be involved, or B, if you think it's a viable option. Okay. Because I respect you as an individual and you've always been, or we have always been, I can honestly say we've always been very transparent and honest with each other. We've never had any type of circumstance that we had to navigate because of the industry that we've been in. We've always been right down the line with each other. So I appreciate you, my brother. Thank you for your time. And again, early this week, I'll be reaching back out to you. I'm going to run something else by you.
All right.
Okay?
Yep.
My guy, Ron Lawrence, everybody. Hope you got them gems. All right, so here we go. We just sat with Ron Lawrence. We appreciate him so much for being there. As you recognize, I keep telling you guys, I'm not guessing. Okay? So here's what you need to know. Okay? Here's what you need to know. He taught us that you realize that during mastering, he recorded a song. Did you catch that, Luigi? That at the day of mastering, he took less than 24 hours to produce Money, Power, and Respect. It wasn't even the song that we heard and know. And he did that in 24 hours. So that's a different level if you think about production energy of what needs to be done. I know when you heard that, you was like, he did what? Okay, that type of thing. Okay. He's about that life for real. He's still there. All right. He's worked for what's the range, guys? Ready? From DMX to Luther Vandross. What does that tell you? What we doing here? What are we doing here? All right. Man, we appreciate Mr. Ron Lawrence just as much as we appreciate Miss Rashida, Mr. Aaron Wilson, Kenneth, Miss Michelle Johnson, Pop Grizz, and the Grand Architect of the Universe. Don't forget to tap in, Goju Nation, FB, the Gram, X, Threads, YouTube, at GothamJungle, one word, at GothamJungle. Like, follow, share, subscribe, comment to become an official member of Goju Nation. And drop your email as well so you can receive our upcoming newsletter and get event and information updates on all things Gotham Jungle. All things Gotham Jungle. And lastly, as we always say, light and darkness cannot coexist at the same time. So if you choose to be one, choose to be the light. We appreciate you. Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Industry rule number 4080. Industry rule number 4080. Record company people are shady.